A shout out to our podcast sponsor, sportsponsorship.co.uk. If you or your business are interested in making a real difference to the Scottish game, supporting hundreds of kids into regular football, get in touch with sportsponsorship.co.uk and they'll find the right fit for your brand. Hello everybody and welcome back to Tinpot, a Scottish football podcast with me, your host Tom Leask, and joined this week by two very special guests for an Edinburgh Derby special. We've got a long-time season ticket holder of Hibernian FC in Darren Polson, and we've got a Hearts fan to an extent in Greig Brown. No, I'm joking. He's a big JT. We're diving in all things Edinburgh Derby. This is in sort of a preview for the big match that's happening on Saturday, the 27th of December at Easter Road. We're going to be looking at sort of nostalgic things to do with Hibs and Hearts, diving into combined 11s. These two are going to be debating all sorts to do with the rivalry, and that's what's coming up in the next hour or so's episode. A wee bit different to normal. No Matt, no Andrew, but these two boys I'm sure will be more than up for filling their seats. Maybe a permanent fixture, you never know. But Greg, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Great, Tom. Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm excited for a bit of healthy East Coast debate.
Fantastic. And Darren, you well? And nervous ahead of Saturday?
Very well. Well, slightly nervous, I must admit. Recent form's not been great. So yeah, thanks for having us on. Looking forward to it.
Absolute pleasure. Not sure if you've listened to too much Tinpot in the past, but don't expect any highbrow takes. It's all just a bit Tinpot. We're very relaxed in this environment. So do what you need to do, chill out, say what you need to say. There's no language barrier either. We always tick the explicit box when we're uploading, so be as grim as you like. But we'll not dilly-dally. I think we should just crack on with the main content of the episode, if that's all right with you boys, yeah?
Let's do it.
Excellent. So, section 1 of this, we're splitting it into 3. We're going to do an agree to disagree segment, which is new to Tinpot. We've never done that with Matt and Andrew, because with a Rangers and a Wraith fan, you can't really have back and forth debate. They're on different levels. Wraith up here and Rangers somewhere down there. But well, agree to disagree. The point is, I'll make a statement, and then you boys are going to pick one side, or potentially both on the same side, and debate it back and forth, and we'll maybe come out with a winner to an extent. The first one should be nice and straightforward to discuss. And I've not prepped you on this, which I maybe should have done. Should have given you a heads up. But maybe it'll be more natural and raw without that. Easter Road has a better atmosphere than Tynecastle.
Oh, here we go.
Darren's liking that, Greg, less so.
Straight in.
What are your thoughts? Disagree from the Jambo on the pod?
Yep.
Why?
Well, are you talking about when there's fans in it or not? Because good, decent capacity, and decent season ticket sales. So official attendances, I think, are okay. But yeah, of recent times, I do watch a lot of Hibs games. So just get this in at the start. But I live in a Highby stronghold with my wife and the children are Hibs fans, so probably lost a bit of credibility immediately. However, yeah, on recent times, it seems like Hibs fans are a bit fair weather, in my opinion. So, therefore, when you look at Hearts, I think our tendencies are much higher in terms of physical people being there. And obviously, the results make a big difference, don't they? So, to be honest, I think both sets of fans are pretty fickle. But I would say of recent years, Tynecastle is streets ahead in terms of atmosphere. And I think the other point I'd make there is when you listen to any teams or other players saying where do they not want to go, I think Tynecastle's top of that list, where they feel like the fans are on top of them. I think the addition of the new stand, where it's sort of 4 stands that are very similar in terms of this kind of how steep they are and how kind of enclosed the stadium feels. It's intimidating for away teams. And I think we've definitely seen that come back more this season than previous years. So yeah, I'm obviously going to disagree. But yeah, that's my reasonings.
It's so the sort of jibe you're making there at the attendances. Are you saying that Hibs are reporting higher attendances than like the actual people that are going to the games?
Well, I think if you look at even last week, I think there was a televised game and they reported it something like 18,000, and you just needed to take one look at the TV and it was clear there was hundreds of empty seats. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Daz, surely there's got to be a bit of comeback to that. Unbelievable.
There is 100% a comeback. So I'll pick apart a couple of points that you've said, Greg. Number one, Easter Road's got higher capacity than Tynecastle, so therefore it's a bigger stadium. Number two, the Tynecastle atmosphere is what I would call a myth. It's an absolute myth of recent years. Tynecastle is a library at times, is what I would say. Yes, you might have potentially higher average attendances, but when you say much higher, I'm not sure that's relatively true. So I would say that when both stadiums are rocking, I'll give you credit, to be fair, when Tynecastle's rocking, it is a good stadium to go to, but for me, there's no that much in it, is what I would say. So I'm not sure it's necessarily a massive difference in atmosphere, but what I would say is that Easter Road, when it's rocking, is a phenomenal place to play football. Tynecastle similarly, but I wouldn't say it's much higher. So there you go. I'm setting a wee bit of needle straight away, Greg.
No, that's fine. I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, Darren. One thing I would say, though, which has been a welcome addition, certainly in terms of atmosphere, is the ultras, so-called ultras, that you have at most clubs now. But certainly at Hearts, I take your point, Darren. Certainly in previous seasons, there's been games I've attended and it's been a bit quiet. And you're kind of looking around going, where is the atmosphere here? And there was people getting drums taken off them and things like that. And there's times when I've sat at Tynecastle and thought the away fans were louder. And that section in the corner, and it's quite small, and away fans are always a wee bit noisier than home fans anyway, but you shouldn't be drowned out in your home stadium. And there's times when I've seen that, and certainly since the Ultras have been there, the last game I was at, I sat right behind them, and it was brilliant. Singing the whole way through, megaphones, drums, and just kind of forces other people to get involved. So I think, regardless of what goes on around that out with football, I think in the stadium, these guys are adding value to the overall atmosphere and experience, I think. Do you think it's a Block 7?
100%. Block 7 it's kind of been moved to a couple of parts. It used to be a section of the East Stand, which was then moved into the North Lower. We've obviously got the safe standing section in there. So, I agree with you. I think that these guys do their bit. They're definitely adding to the atmosphere. I think there's, sometimes the regulations can come down on them a bit too strongly, but I would say that they're definitely adding to the atmosphere of Scottish football in general. But yeah, I think, it's a difficult one because there's times when, let's be honest, if you're reporting figures, which I know you touched on, Greg, about empty seats, I think that's generally something that happens in every stadium. There's times when I watch, games at Tynecastle and there's empty seats as well. And, it wasn't too long ago that we beat you 6-2 Easter Road and, you didn't have any fans in the away end. So, these things happen. But I think, exactly. So, this happens, it happens. But I would say that there's definitely an argument to say that Tiny, from the outside looking in, has always historically had, that kind of atmosphere that everyone talks about. And I agree with you. There's times when I've been at Tiny and it's absolutely rocking, but likewise, I would say the same about Easter Road. So
I didn't really appreciate that 6-2 partner, but we'll move on.
I'm going to have to step in here. I'm not just host this week, I'm also referee. I think I'm going to have to stop you coming to blows. What's the name of the Hearts Ultras section? Do they give themselves a name? I knew you had for Block 7, but
I think it's just the Gorgie Ultras, I think.
I'll put you on the spot there. And apologies. I don't know, because I've seen that at Tannadice as well. And sometimes I think it's great because most of them are young. It's like getting young kids into supporting a local team instead of going to the Old Firm. And even though Hibs, Hearts, United are all big teams, it's good to see them going. I felt that the atmosphere at Tannadice, because they're banging their drum and they're singing pretty much for 90 minutes, you struggle to get the rest of the crowd involved with that sort of sing-along unless it's going really, really well. Then everyone's sort of upbeat. But I don't know, do Hearts miss having a Sunshine on Leith, for example? Would that sway things more in your favour? Or do you not need that?
We're into the songbook already. Here we go.
It's a good question. I mean, I think I don't think we miss that. I think it's only certain times you can sing it. You know, it's a bit like You'll Never Walk Alone. You didn't just, it comes out obviously mid game now and again, but I think Hearts have got a decent enough songbook. Obviously, we've got the Hearts song, which is consistently sung throughout the game. I think these guys come up with some new songs, like the Claudio Braga one, which is there at the moment. I mean, that's an absolute cracker. You know, even not through maroon tinted specs, it's a catchy track and it's great.
I'll give you that. It's a good song. I'll give you that one.
Credit to Queen for that one, I would say, for the fact that it's catchy. But
true.
One thing I would say, I mean, you touched on Sunshine on Leith. Like, obviously, I'm a Hearts fan, and I didn't want to hear that song sung too often. But I think I've said to Darren before, separately, that I think it probably is one of the best, if not the best, football anthem. When, you know, if you see the scenes when they won the Scottish Cup, for example, which I'm sure Darren will mention, so I'll chuck it in there. So that was incredible. Absolutely incredible scenes, and I think it's just one of those songs that when you see it put over videos or put over montages and stuff like that, you can see how it would make the hairs on your back of your neck stand up if you were a Hibs fan. And you know, I've heard a lot of the players talk about the impact that had on them as well. So there's no doubt that's a cracking tune, but I don't think we miss having something similar.
Don't need it.
Plenty other options.
Like you say, it can only really be sung in celebration of a big sort of win, I suppose. Daz, you'll maybe have a different opinion, but it feels like, yes, it's amazing when you have won a Scottish Cup or you've won a derby, and I've seen you play at the end of those types of games, or it's maybe the last game of the season to clinch Europe or something like that. But United don't really have that either. It's probably only Hearts and Hibs and Celtic that have got that big anthem.
It's definitely. I think you're right, Tom. I mean, to be fair, I remember when I was not necessarily really young, but when I was younger, there was periods where we would play Sunshine on Leith after almost every game, and it just was. It was horrendous. Like, there was times where you drew 1-0 with Motherwell at Easter Road and Sunshine on Leith blasting out. You're like, what are you actually doing? Do you know what I mean? But I think you're right, Greg. It's got a place when it's if it's a good victory or if it's an emotional time, where it's that makes sense. It's got gravitas, it's got magnitude. It makes sense playing at those occasions. But there's times where we've played it when I'm walking out Easter Road in a bit of a sort of party atmosphere, and it does tend to bring the mood down a wee bit. And I know that's controversial, but because it's that slow kind of emotional type song, it does do that. But yeah, when you've got like a Scottish Cup or a big victory, then it makes a massive difference. So it definitely does have its place.
It's I'm the neutral here, obviously, in the sort of Hibs Hearts debate, and I've been to both grounds for league games. I follow United, and I've been to see games at both stadiums. I think what Darren was saying at the start is right to an extent. I think everyone looks upon Tynecastle as this incredible atmosphere, and everyone talks about the steep stands and how intimidating it can be. And I think that can be true, but I think it's overplayed. People just make that comment and say, "Oh, Tynecastle's an incredible stadium. It's the best. It's steep stands," and everyone always references steep stands. And I think they get carried away a wee bit. But I would also say I'd put most Scottish football fans in the same bracket, that home fans, if things aren't going well, are generally a bit shite. And I put United into the same bracket. You go to Tannadice, for example, for a home game, the away fans, more or less, unless it's a shite travelling support for someone like St Mirren, but they tend to make more noise because the away fans that go are the diehards that are at every game. They sing the loudest when they're at home. You've got more casual fans that go to the home games, which is fine. It's good that they're supporting their team and doing what they can. But away fans always make more noise. So on a big occasion, for me, I'm going to just draw a line in the sand here and say these are pretty equal when it comes to atmosphere at both stadiums. Because at big games, you can both produce noise. In league games where you're struggling a 2-1 win against someone, you're not that loud, are you? And nobody is.
I agree with that, Tom. I think, like I was at the Dundee game, and we won 4-0, and the atmosphere was great the whole game. Just recently, I'm going on Sunday, against Rangers. The atmosphere will be good. But like last season before, I went to a European game, and I think we were two down. The atmosphere before the game was incredible. Midweek, under the lights, Wednesday night, scarves twirling and all that was brilliant. I think we went 2 down after about 15 minutes, and it was like a library. And, that's that fickleness that comes in. And I think, you're saying the whole of Scottish football, but I don't know if Darren will agree, but Hearts and Hibs fans are some of the worst in terms of their expectations and what they want. There's almost a expectation from both sides that we should be finishing third, we should be getting to cup finals, every season. And if we don't do that, it's not good enough. And a good example of that was Jack Ross. He got finished third in the league. I think they lost the semi-final of one cup, lost the cup to St Johnstone in the COVID year, and the fans basically hounded them out. And
he got them to another final that he got binned before he could even manage it.
Aye, and it probably took them about eight managers to recover from that. And Hearts have done the same. And Robbie Nielsen finishing third, finishing second even, and fans not happy because we had an early Scottish Cup exit, albeit a shocker. But then you go through, saying, well, what's our expectation? Who's coming in? It's taken us a long time to then recover from Robbie Nielsen by bringing in different experimental managers, project managers, foreign managers. We're with McInnes now and things are going great, but I think sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for and maybe temper your expectations a wee bit and say, well, you're not always going to finish third. You're not always going to get to a cup final. There is transition seasons, and that frustrates me sometimes with other Hearts fans.
Aye.
Don't know if you echo that on your side, Daz.
Sorry, on you go.
I know, but sorry, Tom. I would say, I think you're right, Greg. There is definitely an element of that sort of fickle sort of fan scenario. But if we're being honest about it, I think I don't think finishing third's necessarily an unrealistic expectation for a club the size of Hearts or Hibs. I throw Dundee United and Aberdeen into that mix as well. But let's be honest, we spoke about this last year or the year before when the sort of top six was probably the top six biggest clubs in Scotland. And that rarely happens. You always get a smaller club coming into that. And that's not being sort of disrespectful to those clubs. But if you look at the size of the budgets and the size of the stadiums we've already touched on, size of the income that these clubs have got, I think a decent cup run and finishing in a European place has got to be the minimum for a Hibs and a Hearts. And obviously this season, which we'll come on to later when we talk about, the game on the 27th. But, when you look at where Hearts are at the moment, you look at even where Hibs are, the squad that they've got, I don't think finishing in a European spot and necessarily a decent cup run is unrealistic. So I do get your point. Fans are always going to complain when things don't go right. But generally speaking, we should be fighting in those places. And the embarrassing thing, Greg, let's be brutally honest, between Hibs and Hearts is over the last 10 years, it's not happened enough. The relegations that both teams have had, the fact that we've generally struggled over the last 10 years. And that's, considering the size of the clubs that we are, that is bordering on embarrassing. So we'll not dwell on that point, Tom, too much. But
I was going to say, this has all started off very negatively. We're talking about how shite the fan bases are. No, I think just to caveat it a wee bit, I think Scottish football is the best attended per capita in Europe. There was a stat released. There were no slagging off Scottish football fans whatsoever. We're brilliant at backing our team. You're saying they're the expectations to finish third, and it's the right expectation for the size of budget, which I fully agree with. But it's the way people behave when you aren't performing to that level. If you're sitting in sixth and you're pissed off, like you're in a relegation scrap, you're still in sixth. Like just calm the fuck down. It's the same with Rangers and Celtic this season. Like when things aren't going perfectly, 3 games in, you're asking for your gaffer to get sacked, and that is a joke. But look, I think I will draw a line under that one and say I think you're more or less the same, and I'm not going to pick a side.
Okay.
We'll go for a draw in the first one, and also you've just mentioned, Greg, you're away to Tynecastle on Sunday, so I should just let the listeners know this is being released on Boxing Day, one day before the Edinburgh Derby. We are recording this a week in advance because the Christmas week for us three is going to be pretty nuts. So there might be a few things change between us recording this and the podcast coming out. For example, Rangers 3-0 win at Tynecastle on Sunday. I mean, brings a three-way title race, really, doesn't it? So who knows? But yeah, just to pop that in. Anyway, moving on to the next agree to disagree point. We're 20 minutes in and we've only had one, so we need to make these snappier. That's on me. Okay. If everyone is fit, not one Hibs player gets into the current Hearts starting 11. What's your thoughts on that?
Well,
Stunned silence.
I obviously disagree with that.
Who gets in?
I think there's a few that get in, if I'm honest. I think, for me, Martin Boyle is a standout. Kieran Bowie is a standout. Josh Mulligan is a standout. I think all three of them get in. I think in the defence, or in saying that, wide positions, I think Nicky Cadden's in with a shout. I would say Grant Hanley is in with a shout. Possibly Bushiri, which I know might be controversial, but Rocky's been outstanding the last couple of years.
You convinced Greg up until that point, I think. He was starting to listen.
And, I mean, I think those guys are probably our standout players. I mean, Miguel Chaiwa has been great when he plays. I don't think we've seen enough of him. We'll probably come on to this later on, Tom, when we look ahead to the derby on the 27th. However, Greig, for some reason, doesn't see Chaiwa as a starter, which is weird. You know, he doesn't really... He gets at the odd game and then he drops out and then he comes on as a sub. But the games that I've seen him play, he's been outstanding. He's still young, obviously, so, you know, there is an element of improvement that needs to be done there, which is maybe what Greig's trying to do. And then Jamie McGrath as well has been a brilliant signing for us. So, I mean, I've rattled off probably 5 there. But I'm sure Greg will have different thoughts.
Maybe Greg doesn't agree with the statement. Maybe he's also disagreeing, because it's a very, very bold statement to make, saying that all 11 Hearts players are better than the 11 Hibs. But just picking up on the names that Daz has mentioned there, the couple of forwards, Mulligan, Cadden, etc., Hanley, Bushiri, what do you think, Greg?
I think there's some good players in there. I'm not going to say that there's not, like Bowie, for example, but you've got to then look at where does he go. Obviously, they play different systems, different formations and stuff. So, does Bowie go in ahead of Shankland? I don't think so. Does he go in ahead of Braga? Not for me. And there's not really another place for him in the Hearts team. So, as much as I would take him at Tynecastle, I can't see him being going into our starting 11 as it stands just now. Cadden, I'm not even going to entertain. Puts in a good ball, but you're talking about Kizaridis on the left. So, he's arguably one of the standout players in Scotland this season. So I can't see where he gets in.
Depends which Cadden he's talking about, I suppose.
I think he said Nicky, but I mean, to be fair, as when you're looking at full fitness as well, like we've struggled at right back, but I don't think Hibs have really got a strong right back and Cadden or Megwa, isn't it? He doesn't really get a game, so that would be the position I would kind of highlight as weak for us. I agree with what Darren said with Chaiwa. Every time I've seen him, looks tidy on the ball. He gets himself up around the park, but probably doesn't play enough. The one that I would definitely take is Mulligan. I think he's been a fantastic signing. He can obviously play a wee bit right back. I don't know if he's meant to be a right back, as he was signed as a right back, but I think he's probably wasted there. I think he's really good in the centre. Again, all action. He's physical, he's strong. He seems to suit the Scottish League. So I take Mulligan at Hearts tomorrow. But he doesn't get Devlin out of the team. Doesn't get a fit Beningame out of the team. So it's difficult to find that space for him. We've got the boy Adieu as well, the Brazilian guy who, by all accounts, is a world beater, but has played less than 2 games, I think, in total. So it's a bit, you don't know how good he's going to be if he's fully fit. So yeah, I agree with you, Tom. None of them get him.
You agree with the point, do you? The full Hearts 11's better than... Okay.
Yeah.
Any retort to the Beningme chat there, Daz?
I just, honestly, last year the Hearts fans were going on about Cammy Devlin, that he was a headless chicken, he was running a bit daft, and I fair enough, he's done all right under McInnes, but it just shows you what, a few games in a new season can do when you've got Halkett being called up for his national team. That's what they're pushing for anyway. And then obviously Devlin being this world beater. Josh Milligan is a better player than Devlin in the middle of the pitch. And he could probably play right wing back as well. But if I was having a team, I'd rather have Josh Milligan than Cammy Devlin, put it that way.
Are they slightly different players or not?
I'd say they're different. I think what Devlin, Devlin's been our most important player, or one of them this season, and I think McInnes has openly said he was super surprised by him when he came in. I think he thought what a lot of Hearts fans thought, what you said there, Darren, is he's a wee sort of terrier, gets himself about, walking yellow card, doesn't use the ball well, and there's plenty of evidence to show that until this season. And it's almost like McInnes has said that this is what I need you to do. But his usage of the ball's improved dramatically, especially in big games. So, yeah, I'd keep him in. Not dwell on the point. I think one player who gets a bad rap anyway from Scotland fans and just fans in general is Grant Hanley. And I think he'll turn out to be probably Hibs' best signing this season. Once he's got himself fit, he's been a rock solid back there for Hibs and Scotland. So, yeah, again, I would take him at Hearts. Does he get in the first 11? It's hard to drop anyone out of it, considering our position. But I would concede on Hanley that he was getting the squad.
Have you got a Grant Hanley song yet, Daz?
No, we don't actually, which is weird. We've not really adopted anything yet. Aye, he's not been 100% adopted either. But we still sing Rocky Bashiri even when Hanley's playing.
Aye, Grant Hanley's a legend. You both know that. I'm Scotland first before anything else, and he's number one. He's unbelievable.
He is that.
I'd go on the side of the fence of the sort of Hibs debate here. Just that saying 11 players, you kind of get one in for the Hibs team into that Hearts team if they're all fit. Mind you, I'm trying to think who it would be. It's not the keeper. It's not anyone in the attacking positions, I don't think. Boyle would have been close a few years, like last year, for example, before you signed Braga. Boyle would have been straight in there. But centre of the park, I'm back and forth here. I'm struggling.
You've got to think who you're dropping out. I'm not saying these guys aren't good players, because they are. And Hibs have got a good squad this season, probably as strong as it's been for a couple of years. I think they're missing a few key positions, but it's who you're dropping out. It's difficult to say.
Okay, decision made. Sorry, I'm going to go with the Hibs. Grant Hanley gets in. I think also Rocky, to be fair.
Rocky, right? Move on.
I do. I think you're.
Rocky is a decent player, by the way. Honestly, he's improved dramatically.
I would say so. I think
to the FA Ambrose about him in terms of Malmskjaer. We don't have to think far back. That shank on go in the last minute the derby. That's Rocky for me.
There you go. But the debate was not one player gets in, and at least one player does get in from my point of view, which would be Hanley. So I think one.
Disagree, Tom.
The thing is, it's not even a win for Hibs here, really, because I'm saying one player gets in. I mean, you win the debate, but.
I'm taking the win, and so what was that? A draw in the first one and a win for Hibs, right? Good, we're 2-0 up.
Take a win wherever you can get it. Unreal. Number 3. This one you may well agree on. It's more just a point of interest for me than anything else. When Hibs or Hearts play against the old firm, so if it's a Hearts versus Celtic or if it's a Hibs versus Rangers, you as a Hibs or a Hearts fan, do you support the old firm or do you support your rival?
Rival.
So you're supporting Hibs if they play Celtic or Rangers?
Every time, yeah.
I'm never supporting Hearts, if I'm honest.
So you're supporting a draw.
Well, I mean, to give you the perfect example.
You've got to pick one.
Well, I'm supporting. Well, I don't want to say I'm supporting the Old Firm because I never want to support the Old Firm. But put it this way: when Hearts played Celtic last week, I was supporting Celtic. When Hearts play Rangers on Sunday, I'll be supporting Rangers because the thought of Hearts getting even further. Well,
that's what you're saying.
I'm absolutely not. But there's no way I'm going to be supporting Hearts against these teams.
But
that whole nonsense about, it'd be great if they done well. If Hearts won the league, it'll be like England in 1966. We'll never hear the end of it. So
I was going to say
about 5-1.
Is that?
Did you not mention 6-2 earlier? You're chucking the scores out tonight.
I never mentioned 7-0. Come on, give me a wee bit of credit.
Christ almighty. Was that Malmo? Was that Malmo that punches?
Here we go.
It's is your answer swayed as this year just because you're supporting Celtic or Rangers so Hearts don't win the title? Say if Hearts were sitting in 5th just now and they're away to play Rangers on the weekend, would your answer be any different? Would you still support Rangers or would you be more in the Hearts camp on that one?
Do you know, if I'm being brutally honest, Tom, I think the word that you're using is support. Now that's what I've got a bit of an issue with. That's my issue, because if you're asking me who do I want to win, which I know you could do in a roundabout way saying that I'm supporting that team, but I would never say that I support Rangers or Celtic for that matter. So for me,
cheering them on.
No, I'm not cheering them on. But if Hearts win, then I'm supporting Celtic and Rangers. I'm going out there. Because if Hearts win, it's the usual, we were the last team to win at Parkhead. Oh, here we go until the next time. Brilliant. So no, I'm not supporting them in any circumstance.
There we go. Celtic again, we get to keep them, I think.
Oh, here we go. This is the first time in about 60 years, and that's how it goes. They're only as good as the last game.
Twice this season, pumped them.
Pumped them.
Yeah, pump, using the word pumped loosely there, but fair enough. He's a beat them. As we all know. Grateful for anything we can get. Right, I can't really side with anyone on that. It was more just a point of interest. We're going to move on now to a big debate piece, and this is going to extend into sort of section 2 of the podcast. Section 2 is going to be picking a combined 11 between the two clubs over the last 30 years. So the statement is really, in a combined 11 between the two clubs in the last 30 years, it would be dominated by Hibs players. Darren obviously is going to agree with that one, I assume. Greg is going to disagree.
Heavily.
Excellent.
Heavily. I agree with your point, Tom. Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah, just leave it at that. Time now to, do a combined 11 over the last 30 years between Hibs and Hearts. There's 11 places up for grabs. Obviously, it's a football team, so someone here has to win. It's going to be, at worst, 6-5. What I'm going to do is unveil a Hibs and Hearts player in each position. You're going to have a quick discussion, see who's the best, pick one. If you can't decide and can't agree on one, it comes to me, and I'll get the cast and vote. I'm going to share my screen, and if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Music, you're missing out on fantastic graphics that spent a good hour on my lunch preparing earlier. Darren and Greg, can you see that?
Yes.
Fantastic. Right, before we unveil the first players, you both sent through your first 11 and honourable mentions. So, some players that didn't make it from the Hearts team: Antti Niemi, Callum Patterson, Marius Zaliukas, Andy Webster, Thomas Flogel, who is way beyond my ball knowledge, Bruno Aguiar, Cammy Devlin actually got an honourable mention somehow, Jankowskis, Ricardo Fuller, a lot of good names missing out in the Hearts team. And in the Hibs 11 that missed out, we've got players like Miksu Patalainen, we've got Stevie Fletcher, we've got Martin Boyle, we've got Kevin Thompson, McGregor at centre-half, Rocky Marciano in nets, lots of Hibs, I don't know, would you say legends? Probably not. Anyway, going to start in nets and unveil your two picks. Craig Gordon and Jim Leighton. Which one of those two gets into a combined 11 of the last 30 years? What do you think?
For me, it's a no-brainer. This is one of the easiest ones. The fact that Niemi was my second choice tells you how good Craig Gordon is. 2 spells at the club, Scotland international. I would go as far to say, probably the best keeper I've ever had.
Best keeper you've ever had in Craig Gordon?
There's Jim Leighton for you guys.
We
There he
can see
is.
that, mate. But we want to hear why you
Oh,
think.
have you got a wee? Have you got a wee? Are they power pods for back in
No,
the day?
a wee big head, a wee Corinthians big
Oh,
head.
it's incredible.
Comes along with Keith Wright, Keith Wright, Pat McGinley, and Kevin Harper in a 4-set.
Oh.
So there you are.
I mean, that
Not
potentially
spoiling anything,
sways
but
me.
I know none of those three get into the get into my team, to be fair, but this guy does.
What's the reason that Leighton is better than Gordon then?
So for me, Jim Leighton, was, to be fair, he played for Hibs for a number of years. Obviously, Scotland goalkeeper, similar to Craig Gordon, but of an earlier era. He played for Man United, played for Aberdeen, won various trophies throughout his career, won a hell of a lot more than Craig Gordon, in a sense, apart from Craig Gordon's spell at Celtic, obviously. But I think Jim Leighton was a phenomenal goalkeeper. Underrated, actually, because a lot of people, when they do their Scotland goalkeepers, pick Andy Gorham normally. And obviously this is the last 30 years, Tom, so Andy Gorham was out of the Hibs range at that point because they had gone to Rangers. But for me, Jim Leighton is a world-class keeper. So being 100% honest, I don't see much between these two guys. Craig Gordon's a great keeper, don't get me wrong, but I think if you're old enough to remember Jim Leighton, he was a very, very good keeper.
It's going to be tough for me to split these if you can't come to a decision, to be totally honest. One of them is slightly before my time, but I did hear a lot from my old man about Jim Leighton and how good he was in the 90s. I mean, so it could be tough, and I've got a thing for Craig Gordon personally.
What might help here, Tom? I mean, are we talking about these guys' careers or how good they were as Hearts and Hibs players, respectively? Because that
I think that comes into a big, that comes into like what they achieved at the club. I think because for me, if I'm picking a Dundee United team, for example, Andy Robertson's the best Dundee United player in my lifetime by far. He's Champions League winner, Liverpool, Scotland, etc. But he only had, 2 seasons, a season at United, so I don't know. I think longevity and what they achieved at the club does have to come into it if we're going to start nitpicking.
I think based on that, for me, it's Gordon. I mean, Leighton won more, he won European trophies and stuff at Aberdeen, but he never won anything at Hibs. Gordon's won a few things at Hearts, Scottish Cup a couple of times, but for me, I think, obviously I'm going to lean on Gordon here. I think he's he'll go down as one of Scotland's best keepers. Leighton, I think, was a bit unlucky, and who played at the time. You could have with Gorham and stuff, as you've touched on, probably didn't play for Scotland as much as he should have. But for me, it's Gordon.
Yeah,
right.
On you go.
No, I was going to say I'll potentially give you Gordon. But
we're going to have to give each other something. So
we're going to have to give each other something. I'll give you Gordon. I think he's an honourable. Well, I mean, put it this way: from a Hibs perspective, he's he's probably the best keeper I've seen at Hibs. In my lifetime, I would say.
Yeah, Gordon gets the nod. A couple of Scottish Cups, and I think if it wasn't for injuries, he would also be Scotland's leading sort of caps record holder as well. There was a period he was out with pretty bad injuries and missed out on a lot of that, and he's still only 4th or 5th in that list, behind Leighton, obviously. But
I'm not surprised you had to go back a wee bit to get one there, Daz, because Hibs goalies haven't been great, have they, in the last 30 years? Marciano was good.
Marciano, Daniel Anderson, but he was only there for a small period of time.
Then you're looking at what, Colgan? Colgan was an alright goalie, but he's
Colgan was alright. I mean, to be fair, we could do a full podcast on terrible Hibs goalkeepers.
Should have done worse than top.
If you missed the trick, Daz, I would have given you Conrad Logan if you'd put him in just on the vibes alone.
To be fair, he was actually. I was very close. The only good thing about Gordon and Leighton is they both played till about 64, so that's a positive.
Still going strong.
If Gordon and Gunn get injured before the World Cup, I'd take Leighton back in the squad, to be fair. Right,
there you go.
On to right backs then. And your 2 options here are should I say Sir at the start? I'll be kind. I'll say Sir David Gray.
Yes, please.
Knew that was coming. And the Michael Smith, the man in the Hearts jersey. So, thoughts on this
Smith? Oh, that's not even a question. Come on.
I mean, we had a lot.
Defend yourself,
Smith.
We had Robbie the Tackle Nielsen, Baltic hero Gary Locke was unlucky not to make it. Callum Patterson. But Michael Smith, I mean, again, I've looked at his service to the club. He was a bit like what Dennis Irwin was like at Man United. You know, he was a solid 7, 8 out of 10 every single week. Kind of played everywhere for us. Even when times were tough, he was a standout player. So yeah, that's why I went for him. In the last 30 years, I think he's a really solid option.
I mean, there's no question. David Gray's absolutely getting it. I mean, to be fair, my second choice was Ulysses De La Cruz, who was a phenomenal player, albeit for a short period of time for Hibs, but then went on to Aston Villa and had obviously a good career after that. But he was more of a wing back, I would say. I think the formation is potentially the challenge there, but for me, David Gray, similar to Michael Smith, actually, gave 110%. Probably not the greatest ability, in terms of a natural football player. Just gave his all every single time he played. But Scottish Cup winner, Championship winner, if you want to add that in there as well. But
Michael Smith's got that title against his name as well, to be fair.
Well, that's true, right.
But he does have...
David, the man.
He does only have three runners-up medals from the Scottish Cup as opposed to a winner's medal, so...
Well,
I think you've went on nostalgia, Darren. He's obviously a legend, current manager. The Scottish Cup goal gives him probably legendary status up there with any Hibs player. But I would, in terms of right backs, if I was playing against Hibs, I'd be more worried about De La Cruz, Didier Agat. I think Whittaker was probably a better footballer than David Gray. I can see why you went from. I think based on who he is, the impact he's had at Hibs, I'd not happily, but I'll concede on David Gray.
David Gray, once of Hearts youth. Does that go down as a Hearts win or a...
Well, that's the one, mate. I wasn't going to mention that, but I think it was Man United as well. I think because he left Hearts to go Man United.
There he is, David Gray, in at right back. Right, we're going to move on to our first of two centre back choices. This one, I don't think anyone's going to concede on. Or will they? Stephen Presley and Rob Jones.
I mean, two captains, isn't it? Two cup-winning captains. Although one was Mickey Mouse, one was Scottish. So, for me, Presley at Hearts was phenomenal. Probably played his best football there. Obviously, went on to Celtic and he's the Demon Headmaster now. But as a footballer, he was an absolute colossus at Hearts. Didn't really like the way he left. And some of the stuff that happened after, but you can't take away from how good he was as a centre-half. So, for me, Presley, in terms of ability, is well ahead of Rob Jones.
I completely disagree. I completely disagree. I think Presley was a good player. I think Greig, to be honest, he's very similar to some of the players that we spoke about. Well, particularly in the right back position, where we're talking about ability or wearing your heart on your sleeve. Presley wore his heart on his sleeve. Don't get me wrong, but he went to Celtic. He didn't really play too much. For me, Presley was a good SPL defender. Rob Jones was a brilliant player for Hibs, and he was one of those guys where I always remember that. For me, I judge a player in terms of who they bring along, and Rob Jones played with Chris Hogg at centre half for quite a bit of his time, and Chris Hogg was basically carried by Rob Jones, and then he actually then brought a young Paul Hanlon in to play alongside him, and Paul Hanlon literally learned everything off Rob Jones. Now, to be fair, you can say what you like about Paul Hanlon, but Paul Hanlon had more appearances than probably Stephen Presley across his career, and he's still playing now at a decent level. And that kind of tells you what you need to know. Rob Jones was very, very underrated as a centre-half. And Aye, Presley, don't get me wrong, was a good player, but for me, Tom, I think you might need to step in, but I'm not necessarily going to concede that one, because I think Rob Jones was better than Presley.
I think that's mind-blowing, mate. That's mind-blowing. So I can't believe we're even having it. So Tom, over to you, mate.
Oh, it's a no-brainer. Sorry, I'm not biased in this whatsoever, but Stephen Presley, yeah, he gets his spot in this team. Rob Jones, I know it's hard that you can't get international caps at England that easily, but he didn't even get an under 21 appearance. His CV isn't really that much to be spoken of, and like you said, Daz, he did teach younger Hibs defenders to do what they need to do, and it's Paul Hanlon's the example you used. But he was a caretaker manager at Doncaster Rovers, hasn't he gone into coaching since then, from what I understand. So how much of an influential coach could he have been on the pitch? I don't know. Stephen Presley, yeah, that was the hardest one to win, I think, in the centre-back pairings. If you'd been up against maybe the other Hearts option here, you might have had Rob Jones in the team, but Presley does get the nod.
You're right, Presley's got a glittering CV as a coach, to be fair, so...
Yeah, I don't know why I brought up coaching.
Exactly, aye. Dear me.
I changed my mind. Rob Jones is in. Scrap what I said. Right, second centre half option. The two competitors here are Davy Weir and Frank Sauzy. So I think we best start with you, Darren. Here, it's only
listen,
fair.
Le God, the greatest player to play in Edinburgh for the last 30 years. Never mind at Hibs or Hearts, is Frank Sauzy. European Cup winner, rocks up to Hibs in the Championship, I'll have you know, and he was an absolute Rolls Royce. And I'll tell you this, the best credit I can give to Frank Sauzy is anybody who I know that talks about your greatest ever teams of, Hibs and Hearts teams, and I mean greatest ever teams, going back to guys like Eric Shapler and, like proper players that have played defensively for any team, Blackley, Brownlee, Pat Stanton, all these guys that talk, every single guy, even if they're 50, 60, 70 years of age, Frank Sauzy's in their team. Frank Sauzy was unbelievable as a player. And, the fact that you've got a guy who's won the European Cup, fair enough, he was in the twilight of his career, I'll give you that. He was old when he was 37, I think, when he signed for Hibs, maybe 38. And obviously stayed with us for a couple of years, but this guy was world class, and I would say that he, for me, is a no-brainer in that position.
Any contention there, Greg? Anything you want to?
I remember when Sauzy signed for Hibs, and I couldn't believe it. I knew who he was. Obviously played for Marseille, and when he signed for Hibs, I was like, how have they managed to get him? And I think probably a lot of Hibs fans were the same, and he proved that with his quality. I've went for Davy Weir, who I think is probably one of the best Scotland centre halves we've had. So Scotland international level, obviously Premier League, Everton. He was only at Hearts for sort of three seasons or so, but he was a brilliant player when he was with us, and you could see he was going all the way. Obviously, he was at Rangers through the banter years as well. So, I think I'll need to concede on Sauzy. I thought you might have stuck him in midfield, Darren. That's the only slight surprise for me. I know he was probably more of a centre half for you, but he stepped out for the back all the time, played a few games in midfield. Certainly, that was my memory of him. But would you say he was more of a centre half?
He was. By trade, he was a kind of defensive midfielder, Greg, when they won the European Cup and all that sort of stuff. But when he came to Hibs, McLeish had him as a kind of sweeper, almost centre-half type player, with Paul Fennick and Gary Smith, which tells you all you need to know, by the way. These were the guys that... I know, these were the guys that Sauzy played in a back three with. But, to be fair, honourable mention to Davy Weir. Davy Weir was a class centre-half, really good player. Scotland obviously played, with Everton for a number of years as well. He was a very, very good player. But Sauzy was a different level, I would say.
Yeah, Sauzy.
Yeah, I'm not of that generation. I didn't get to see Sauzy play, but just from even non-Hibs fans talking about him, it's pretty obvious that he goes in. I think Davy Weir might have had a shout to be above Presley, but if you're looking at a Hearts player, Davy Weir doesn't strike. You don't remember Davy Weir for his time at Hearts really in his career, do you? So I'd rather have if you're going to look as a Hearts team, I'd rather have
His best years
Presler.
were probably at Everton. You know, and you look at the calibre of strikers he was playing against in the Premier League then, it's incredible, and holding his own. And remember him for Scotland as well, obviously. Okay,
the sticky buns won't like you saying that, but we'll move on. Left back. Two, again, very, very good options here. I don't know who... I was trying to think before this as to whose side I'm on, but I want to leave it up to you two. So, from the Hearts perspective, we've got Takis Fisas and Ulrik Larsson is the Hibs up for debate here. So, Greg, starting with you, what's your reason for Takis?
No surprise with the two options. I don't think Larsson's a good player, obviously went to Celtic and stuff, and had a good career, solid player. Fisas, he spoke about Rolls Royce. I think that's exactly what he was. He was another one when we signed him. I think he had just won the Euros with Greece. He had won the league with Benfica, I think, before he came. And he's one of those players that turns up on the pitch and you're going, why is he here? You know, he just stood at a mile. So he was a bit more than a left back. So much of the play went through him. Obviously, that was the you could argue banter years, but probably the most exciting time to be a Hearts fan in the last 30 years was when we were signing some of these boys like Jankowskis and all that. Fisas came in. I think we must have signed 100 players in probably 2 seasons, but he was an absolute standout for a couple of years. And again, you speak to any Hearts fan, they'll say Fisas is the best left back we've ever had. Guys like Gary Naismith was great, but Fisas was just different class. So, for me, this one's an easy one.
The fact you put Fisas in over Naismith for me is that was my sort of era when I started going to Scotland games, and I remember going to see Naismith at Hampden, and I thought he was fantastic. But yeah, the fact you put Fisas ahead of him tells you all you need to know. Darren, your reasons for Ulrik Larsson, or perhaps you agree with Greg?
I must admit, I thought Fisas was class. To be honest, I thought he was a very, very good player. He was one of those guys where I remember going to a derby at Tynecastle, and he was incredible. To be fair, Ulrik Larsson, honourable mention to David Murphy as well, who I had in, who's arguably got the best first touch I've ever seen from anybody at Easter Road. He could literally stop a ball from anywhere. Ulrik Larsson was a big sort of lanky guy, you know, ran up the touchline, played more as a wing back, won the Danish Cup twice maybe, played for Odense, was a captain at Copenhagen, he won the league and cup with Celtic, and then obviously was the runner-up in the Europa League against Porto. He was in Martin O'Neill's team. So really, really good pedigree. Again, probably one of those guys, Greg, I think you'd agree, was probably too good to be at Hibs when he first signed us. He was one of those guys that he was just brilliant. So I would, based on that, I thought Larsson was phenomenal, but I probably would say that Fisas was probably better. So I'm happy to concede that one, but Larsson was a great player.
Yeah, a couple of decent shouts. If it had come to me, I think the credentials of Fisas alone are enough to get him in the team. But I remember that Larsson, was he in the Celtic team that lost the UEFA Cup final as well?
Yeah,
he's in the squad.
UEFA Cup.
There you go. So we've got 5 players named so far, 3 Jambos and 2 Hibs. We're about to crack on with the midfield. Let's crack on. We'll start on the right as we did in the defence. Your 2 options are 2 Scotland, use the word loosely, legends, Neil McCann and Scott Brown. Scott Brown, most known for his role as a centre midfielder, but obviously when he started at Hibs, he was a wide man and he got up and down the pitch, scoring more goals than he did at Celtic. So this could be tough to contest. What's your reason for Scott Brown over Neil McCann, Daz?
I think you're right. Actually, Tom, Scott Brown started as a striker for Hibs. Actually, he was a very nimble, quite a skinny lad when he first came on. A few of the young lads that came through, obviously you remember the famous picture of the Brown, Riordan, Thompson, Whittaker, and Stephen Dobie, of all people, who was also in that picture at the time. But Scott Brown was I had to get him in the team based on what he achieved at Hibs and then also what he achieved later on in his career. And I think Scott Brown, I mean, he's one of these guys, he's a bit of a pantomime villain, let's be honest. He gets the hatred from a lot of different teams, but, even when he went to Aberdeen towards the end of his career. But for me, Scott Brown is underrated. I think he was a very good player. You look at the clubs that he played against, Champions League-wise for Celtic, obviously played for Scotland a number of occasions. Didn't really achieve much with Scotland, as we know. Obviously, we've done a lot better in recent years, but there's so many other players that could be in the same boat, including Neil McCann, to be fair. So for me, Scott Brown was a phenomenal player, and I think he deserves to be in.
Greg? Neil McCann.
I know roughly where he's going to go now in midfield. I was expecting Scott Brown might make it in his centre mid. I get why he's there. Neil McCann, I mean, over 2 spells with Hearts was brilliant. He was obviously, unfortunately, went to Rangers, one of those players, Darren. I think we got a nominal £2 million for, and obviously went on to be highly successful at Rangers. So they're both highly decorated players in Scottish football. I don't think there's doubt in their quality in either of them. But for me as a wide player, McCann was one of the best I've ever seen at Tynecastle. He was brilliant. He could beat a man. He was good for Scotland. I mean, Don Hutchison's goal against England was all Neil McCann, wasn't it? So I think this is a tough one. I don't think we're going to agree on it, Darren, but Neil McCann kind of speaks for himself, in my opinion, in terms of how good a player he was.
I think, Greg, just coming in on that, I think what's quite good about Neil McCann and Scott Brown is they both won something with Hibs and Hearts.
Yeah.
Because obviously Neil McCann went to Rangers, won what he won with Rangers. Scott Brown, I think, won 10 league titles or something with Celtic when he was there. But Scott Brown won the cup with Hibs. Obviously, Neil McCann won the cup with Hearts as well. So it was quite good that they actually won a trophy. League Cup, which remember, Greg, the League Cup's only the best teams in the country. The Scottish Cup's all the teams. Hence why you won it against Gretna. So right, let's not go into that one. The League Cup's only your best teams in the country. And at that time when he won it, we also got a European place. So you could argue is on the same level as the Scottish Cup.
You could argue it, but you'd be wrong. Okay.
I think
you, Tom?
Right.
For me, if I'm picking a player that I'd want in my team, just a player I'd want to play football for me, it would be Scott Brown. But I think he never played wide when he won those titles, like you say, at Celtic, and when he was playing against those big teams, or when he played for Scotland. When he played at Hibs for those few years when he was more of an attacking threat, I think if I'm looking at an attacking threat, a wide player that I'd want on my team out of those two, it'd probably be Neil McCann. Which is a shame, because I think Scott Brown as a footballer would get into this combined team. Probably, if you look at the central midfield options. But I appreciate why you've put him there, Daz. I know who your Hibs choices are at centre mid, and they're brilliant choices, and you had to put Scott out there. That's where he played for you guys. So yeah, I think I'll, for this one anyway, side with the natural, or the longevity of the wide man in Neil.
Disappoint him.
And I can see why. It's a tough choice. That's why you two haven't agreed. But Neil gets in. Neil gets in. He's also a friend of the pod. I bigged him up. I did a quiz about goals a few weeks ago, and I said that he'd scored 179 career goals, which was a fatal error in my quiz preparation. It was actually only 47 or something. Anyway, central midfield, the first choice we have Colin Cameron and Russell Latapi, or Latapi, if you're of that persuasion. This could be a very interesting discussion. Go, Darren. Tell us why.
There is nothing interesting about this. Russell Latapi is absolutely the best player, along with Frank Sozzi. For me, an absolute genius. The guy was about 64 when he signed for Hibs, and then went on to play for about another 25 years for Rangers and Falkirk and whoever else he played for. Trinidad and Tobago masterclass, played against Scotland at Easter Road in a friendly. Dwight York's his best mate. I always remember the story that Yogi said about Russell Latapi standing on the side of the touchline at Falkirk smoking a fag And the young boys come up to him and said, how's he allowed to get away with that, gaffer? And Yogi, being Yogi Hughes, turns around and says, if you're as good as him, you can do whatever you want. And that sums up Russell Latapy. He's a world-class player. And I'll use the term world-class loosely, but he is a phenomenal football player, just a bit. And Colin Cameron, who was actually playing against Russell Latapy in the 6-2 demolition at Easter Road. So that should tell you that Russell Latapy is the only man that's in this position.
Good argument. Good argument.
I knew Latapy would be in. I would describe him as a maverick. On his day, class, no doubt about it. He nothing was really rushed for him. Nothing was difficult. Could take the ball down anywhere. Really good player. Had a few good games against Hearts as well. So I'm not surprised that he's been picked. For me, Colin Cameron was brilliant. Absolute brilliant Hearts player. I was there for 6 seasons, 157 appearances for Hearts, which is about double what Latapy played for Hibs. Scored more goals as well, 48 goals, so about a 1 in 3. Attacking midfielder, scored the opening goal in the Scottish Cup final, which was our first Scottish Cup for a long, long time in 1998. So that kind of gave him that hero status. I was 14 at the time and remember it vividly. So I loved Colin Cameron when I was growing up, and I think he warrants a good shout in this team. So we're not going to agree, Daz.
Not going to agree on this one either.
Nah,
you must surely admit Colin Cameron. I mean, he might have a space. I agree, Greg. I think Colin Cameron's a good player, but come on, Russell Latapy is a genius.
Nah, but
he's one of the best players
every week.
Oh, he was. You've got to remember as well that this guy was literally running rings around anybody in the SPL. Nobody could get near him.
One of your reasons for putting him in was he's Dwight York's mate. I mean,
that was only a bit banter.
It's not really a reason, is it?
That was the reason why I put him in.
You're appealing to the referee with that. I'm a big vibes man. That did sway me, if I'm totally honest. If you're not agreeing, as much as I think both of these are slightly before my time, if I'm totally honest. I remember Colin Cameron in a Scotland shirt in my early years of following them. Latapy, vibes man, the usual sort of co-host here knows a lot more about Latapy than I do. And if he was here, he'd definitely go with... I am going to go with Russell. Taking Trinidad to the World Cup in 06.
Yes, I never even mentioned that. Well done, Tom.
Yeah, he does get in. I do like Colin Cameron, but just slightly too dull for my liking. So there you go.
The king of the sideways pass, Colin Cameron. He was doing it before Barry Ferguson.
The crab,
Next.
That style. Next up, centre midfield position number 2, and this one is going to have the discussion of, is it what they did at their club or is it what they did afterwards, I feel. We've got Paul Hartley and John McGinn. So John McGinn, a very sort of short spell at Hibs in relative terms, I think, but obviously won them that Scottish Cup. The famous one after, 112 years, Dan?
Did we not put David Graham because he won them the Scottish Cup?
We put David Graham because he was a better player than Michael Smith. That's why we put him in. So I'll lead straight into this one on John McGinn. So I agree, right? So John McGinn, there is a debate about, well, what did he do after? He was at Hibs. However, John McGinn at Hibs was... You need to remember, John McGinn was at St Mirren before that, so he wasn't like a guy straight out the youth team, just making up the numbers or trying to ply his trade. Obviously, Stephen Thompson almost ended his career by throwing a corner flag into his leg. But John McGinn was outstanding when he came to Hibs. Again, in the Championship as well. So, I'll take that on board. Paul Hartley was obviously an ex-Hibs player as well, by the way. But John McGinn was a phenomenal player. If you're asking who I want in my midfield, it's in terms of the engine, the fitness levels, John McGinn is far superior to Paul Hartley. Paul Hartley was a good player at Hearts, but John McGinn was significantly better. Won the Scottish Cup for Hibs, 114 years, and also was just a great player. Alongside Scott Allen and Dylan McGeoch, that midfield three.
Did they win the Scottish Cup for Hibs too?
Well, they did, aye. That was the Scottish Cup, but and to be fair, obviously, well, the Scottish Cup team had Fraser Fivey and that in it, so we'll not go into that. But aye, to be fair, John McGinn was brilliant and is a better football player than Paul Hartley.
Greg, defend Zico.
It's combined Hearts and Hibs 11, so you could argue he played for both. 8 goals v Hibs, so big time player. Obviously a hat trick in the Scottish Cup semi-final and the 4-0, which I think is one of.
We spoke about bad Hibs goalkeepers, so we're talking about Zibby Malkowski here.
Malkowski
you can't count
poor Zibby.
for Paul Allen. Come
you
on,
got an assist on 2 of them, Hank. But I think there's only been something like 8 or 9 players that have scored a hat trick in a Edinburgh derby because they're always pish games. But Hartley got 3 in that game. 8 goals against Hibs from midfield's incredible. The season where we finished second and it was him, Scatcho and Brelly, he was unplayable at times. I think he got over 20 goals that year. So I get McGinn's a great player and he's went on to do great things and still doing great things and got the biggest arse in world football. So no doubting that he's a class player, but if you're looking at the impact in terms of Hearts and Hibs, I mean, Hartley's streets ahead in terms of what he's done in this fixture.
Nonsense. Not streets ahead. Paul Hartley and John McGinn played similar number of games. John McGinn played 106 games, I think it was, for Hibs. Hartley played about 120 for Hearts. So no masses of difference in terms of the longevity at the clubs. And John McGinn, I mean,
when he goes to
Scotland
against Hibs. Against Hearts.
Well, that's not why we're doing it. If that was the case, I would have Mixu in here, but I don't. So we're not doing it on how many goals you score against the club. I would. Mixu would be your team.
Step in, Tom.
I'm gonna have to decide here.
Come on, Tom. It's Super John.
Yeah. Sorry. It's
take a Scotland.
I do have a lot of time for Paul Hartley. Underrated, but. What he achieved, so you're talking about just what he achieved in the Edinburgh Derby. There purely on that, he's going to get in. But because John McGinn wouldn't have played in many Edinburgh Derbies because was there not a few seasons where one of these was down and one of these was up?
Aye, exactly. Played 100 games for Hibs, but about fucking 50 of them were in the Championship. Anyway, you've made your decision. Move on.
Oh, he's absolutely raging. We've rattled him. Good, right. Yeah. Scandalous. No, I do. It's a difficult one. I do rate Zico. Anyway, the left mid options coming up for you. If I can find my wee cursor on this screen. This one I don't think we're going to agree on either. I think I'm going to have to step in here too. It's Rudy and Deke. Scatchel and Riordan.
Wow.
Probably the 2 most hated on either side, I would say, and I've put them together.
It's tough.
I would agree with that. They like singing songs about each other as well. You could probably step in early here, Tom, but I mean, Scatchel speaks for himself. I think, in my opinion, probably the best player I've seen at Tynecastle. Could score from anywhere. Darren will say the same about Riordan. I'd argue that he probably wasn't a left winger. Scatchel played in the middle a lot, but he played in the left a lot as well. 48 goals in 109 games over 2 spells from midfield. Is incredible. Obviously loved a goal against Hibs. Scored big goals. Scottish Cup final twice. Scored against Gretna, scored against Hibs in the final. So, for me, this is a no-brainer. I can see why Riordan's in there. Again, a bit of a maverick, I would say. He's the type of player you would want in your team, but hate him when he's not on your team. Scatchel is arguably the same, but for me, Scatchel is a stick-on.
Daz, can you be convinced by that, or are you sticking purely on with Riordan?
100% sticking on Riordan. Riordan is one of the most gifted finishers that Scottish football's ever had. Gordon Strachan said that himself when he was at Celtic. Riordan was one of those guys where he
did they play probably no.
No, I was going to say he probably didn't have as good a work ethic, I think, and he was a young lad from a an area of Edinburgh where he was a Hibs fan. His dream was to play for Hibs, and then obviously became, a first team player with Hibs. And you get involved in a bit of trouble and all the rest of it, but as an actual talent of a football player, this guy was unbelievable. The reason I put him on the left is because one of the best goals I think anyone's ever seen in Scottish football was when he cuts inside from the left at Easter Road, drills an absolute beauty 40-yarder into Craig Gordon, by the way, who's the goalkeeper that we've gone with today. And Craig Gordon had absolutely no chance. So for me, Riordan is a better football player than Rudy Scatchell. Rudy Scatchell was one of those guys, a bit like when we talked about pantomime villains earlier on. He was that type of guy, and I think he, in my opinion, he doesn't get the credit that he deserves for being as good a football player as he was. And he didn't achieve what he should have achieved in the game. And I'll come on to someone else in the team who gets that rep as well. But for me, Riordan was an incredible football player, great finisher. If you want somebody in and around the box, if I'm choosing somebody, Scatchell or Riordan, I'm choosing Riordan. Riordan's going to finish it, Scatchell's going to hit it over the bar. And the fact that Scatchell ends up playing, for a few teams after Hearts, plays for Dundee United, sorry Tom, doesn't he really do much? The fact that Riordan had a spell at Hibs, then Celtic, then back at Hibs, goal scoring records are second to none. Riordan's a better player.
Scatchell came back as well.
And he wasn't great. Let's be honest.
I would argue
he wasn't great in his second. He wasn't great in his second spell.
Scored the hat-trick in about 30 minutes against St Mirren, and then asked to be subbed off. It was one of the best things I've ever seen. It was the second spell is when he was actually better. Darren played more games, scored more goals. That was obviously when we won the cup against Hughes. The first time he was there was obviously with Romanov, and he was there on loan. But that was with Hartley and Greig and stuff. So, we're not going to. If he's that good a finisher, stick him up front. That's what I would say. But when you go,
that's where I was going. If I'm honest, I knew it was going to come down to me with this one because it's so hard to pick. I do agree with what you're saying, Darren Riordan. I think naturally, if he had someone by his side in his whole career telling him to go down the straight and narrow and be a proper professional, he would have had a much better career than what he did. Like you say, an incredible finisher, very naturally talented, and I think through the middle he might have had a. I'm not. This is so difficult.
I think in a number 10 position, maybe. Obviously, that was his number. Then in his second spell, he had 0-1 because number 10 was given away. But number 10 position, arguably, Scatchell is arguably a number 10 as well, Greig, let's be honest. But I think for me, Riordan did play a lot on the sort of left of that three up front, and then obviously used to cut inside quite a bit. But in my opinion, Riordan's a better player than Scatchell, but it's probably one for you, Tom.
What I'm going to do is pass over to my esteemed colleague to make a decision here, because I genuinely can't. Bear with me just a second whilst I finish typing this into ChatGPT.
Your esteemed colleague, ChatGPT.
Yeah, mate, it does a lot of work for me.
We're even having this discussion.
I think Darren might have shot himself in the foot by going left wing with Riordan in a 4-4-2. That's the only thing that's making me think Scatchell. And the fact there's 2 Scottish Cups there as well. It's same word as me. ChatGPT has spoken.
And semi-final goals as well. But good. Correct.
Scatchell's in. In true Tinpot fashion, the AI has spoken. That would have been my pick, to be fair. I was just very, very on the fence, but Scatchell gets in. So far we have Craig Gordon in nets, David Gray, Stephen Presley, Frank Sawsey, and Takis Fisas at left back, Neil McCann on right mid, Russell Latapi, John McGinn in the central midfield, a Hibs pairing in the CMs, and Rudy Scatchell on the left mid. So it's 5-4 to Hearts currently. Very, very tight. Right, the first striker position. John Robertson, by the way. Unbelievable. And he's up against Zitelli. So You're going to have to argue this one amongst yourselves.
This should be the shortest discussion. Where do you want to start? John Robertson, 108 goals for Hearts, 27 against Hibs. Most by a mile in that fixture. Obviously, it was at a time where Scotland were blessed with strikers and McCoist and Mo Johnston and players like that. Gordon Durie, etc. But Robertson, it's probably the greatest Hearts player ever to play. So I've not got much more to say. Be interested to see how Zatelli stacks up against them.
Probably wish I'd put Derek Riordan in there, to be honest. Instead of, no, I'm joking. No, I would say, to give Zatelli his credit, right? So David Zatelli was a guy who joined Hibs. Obviously played in France most of his career. I think he started in 1985 or something. So he joined Hibs, when he was kind of, again, one of those guys that was slightly older. Scored an absolute raker for an acute angle against Motherwell at Fir Park. Scored an overhead kick against Dundee in the snow. Hibs were wearing a white away strip. He was wearing gloves. I remember it vividly. Absolute Rolls Royce player. Brilliant player for Hibs. And I think the reason why I'm saying this, a lot of Hibs fans will be looking at it thinking, like you said, Tom, Stephen Fletcher, Mixu Patalainen, possibly Derek Riordan, going up front. These guys could have probably been there. But for me, personally, I really enjoyed watching Zatelli, and I thought he was a really, really class player. Came similar time to Frank Sozzi. I think that was the introduction, actually, was Sozzi sort of introducing Zatelli. Won the French Cup with Strasbourg. Was a great player, but I'm probably going to need to concede John Robertson on this one.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't get to watch either of these boys in their prime, obviously, but John Robertson's record speaks for themselves, and it's only right that he has a place in the combined 11. Moving on to our final position, the second striker. Two Scotsmen. Very, very different styles of number 9. Lauren Shankland and Gary O'Connor.
This is no question, by the way. This is no question. And I'm going to go first here, Tom.
Right? Oh, please do.
This is not a question on your Nelly that Shankland is a better player than Gary O'Connor. Gary O'Connor is a significantly better striker than Lawrence Shankland. Lawrence Shankland, fair enough, he's had a bit of a pulper patch in his recent years with Hearts. He's had a good couple of seasons, and he's scored goals wherever he's been, I'll give him that. But Gary O'Connor is a guy who comes through at Hibs, plays incredibly well, scores a number of goals. Then he is playing in the Premier League. He's playing in Russia. He's won the Cup in Russia with Lokomotiv Moscow. Gets handed a wad of cash, which is obviously a bit dodgy, but we'll no question the Russians. This guy is an incredible player. Plays in the Premier League at every stadium. Lawrence Shankland is not a Premier League player, and that tells you everything you need to know about Lawrence Shankland. He's a very good SPL striker, but he's no anywhere near as good as Gary O'Connor.
Succinctly put, very straight to the point. Greg, do you disagree?
I disagree, aye. I think O'Connor, I thought he might have been coming up. I thought Griffiths might have got a shout. I thought Riordan would have got a shout. For me, all three of them are the same. Absolute wasted talents. Frustratingly, from a Scotland point of view, I think all three of them could have been led the line for Scotland for a number of years, but for different reasons, they all fell away. I can see you shaking your head, Darren. I'm not saying they were bad players. They were good players. And they were good players at Hibs. Arguably had some of their best days at Hibs. But I think it's just a story what could have been for these guys. And O'Connor's another example of that. I think he openly admits it. The potential he had. I remember when he came through at Hibs, he was like 18, 19, an absolute battering ram, physically had it all, scored all sorts of goals. But I don't think his career post Hibs is much to write home about. Obviously, he came back to Hibs. Look at Shankland. O'Connor 58 goals in 170 odd games for Hibs. Shankland 64 goals in 122. So for me, Shankland has turned into a brilliant player. We miss him more than people think. Obviously, it's not just his goals, but when he was out for a couple of games earlier this season, Hearts had a bit of a rocky patch through a few games. That's when you see how big a loss Shankland is, because we've got goals from all over the team just now with Kazanides and Braga and other boys chipping in, but Shankland knits it all together. So he's an all-round quality player. Obviously, McInnes has come out and said that. That's Naismith who managed them recently. I think he should be leading the line for Scotland when we go to the Euros as well. So,
sorry, Greg, to jump in there, but see at the tail end of last season, would you have said the same thing?
What, that he's our biggest loss?
Aye, and that he should be leading the line for Scotland at the World Cup when he couldn't score in about 18 games, I think he went without scoring.
That was because of where he was being asked to play. So he was being asked to play as a 10 and basically dropped deeper. And they never played him up front. And then when we got rid of the manager and brought a new manager in, all of a sudden he starts scoring again. So to me, if you play him in his right position, he'll get you goals. We've seen that a couple of seasons ago. Hearts were miles off it in comparison to where we are now. I think we still finished third, and the only difference that season between us, Hibs, Aberdeen, was Shankland. We had somebody that could put the ball in the net. The rest of the team was average at best. So, he definitely had a dip last season, but I think his record is, a 1-2 record he's got. His captain, his all-round play is so much improved. For me, he's a player I would have in ahead of Gary O'Connor, but it's got to come to the
Well, can I just give you a bit of a parting argument, Tom, for this, right? So look at the era that Gary O'Connor played and the era that Lawrence Shankland is playing in. Gary O'Connor played when Celtic and Rangers were way above the levels that they are now, right? Way, way above. Lawrence Shankland played for Hearts when, you're looking at a championship club that was coming back into the SPL. He played for Ayr United, Aberdeen, Dundee United, all these different teams. Gary O'Connor broke through at Hibs when we were playing against far superior clubs in Scotland than what they are now, the levels that they were at. And Greig touched on there that they didn't really do much after they left the club. So, and he was talking about Riordan and the guys, Lee Griffiths as well. So Gary O'Connor went and played in the Premier League. Now, Gary O'Connor was playing at Old Trafford, he was playing at Anfield, he was playing at the Emirates, possibly Highbury back in the day. Gary O'Connor was playing Premier League football. And yes, he was obviously trying to get in the Scotland squad. He was in the Scotland squad several times. But you look at the managers that Scotland had at that time as well. And obviously we had guys like Kenny Miller or whoever it might have been that was playing up front at the time for Scotland. And then Gary O'Connor goes to Russia, which was a brave move at the time. Plays for Lokomotiv Moscow, and he scores the winning goal in the Russian Cup final against Spartak Moscow. This guy achieved a lot. But I think the problem is because he gets that sort of reputation that, he didn't really achieve much. And don't get me wrong, he probably could have achieved more. But when you look at a guy from Musselburgh that goes in and plays, in the cup finals in Russia, plays in the Premier League at the biggest stadiums, plays against the best teams in Scotland at a time when Celtic and Rangers were very, very good. For me, that is where he's a better player than Lawrence Shankland. Lawrence Shankland's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he's not as good a player as Gary O'Connor. And that, for me, if you remember that period when they broke through, Gary O'Connor was far better than what Lawrence Shankland is.
Well,
yeah, it's coming down to me.
Shankland career goals 227, O'Connor 104. And he played for Birmingham.
That's my point, Greg. Shankland scoring his goals for Ayr United, and he's scoring his goals in lower leagues. Gary O'Connor's playing the Premier League.
But he scored 7 goals or something, 9 goals. You're talking about him going in when he played for Hibs, coming through in a harder time, and Rangers and Celtic were better. He scored 46 goals in 6 or 7 seasons. That's not exactly.
But you also need to remember. But you also need to remember that he was the proverbial big man, wee man. So he played up front with Riordan or he played up front with Stephen Dobie, for example, at the time. There was loads of different players that O'Connor played up front with, and he would basically be laying the ball off and holding it up and all that sort of stuff. And he wasn't a poacher, you know, in the 6-yard box type of striker. So that's what Shankland is, which is the reason why Shankland's got more goals.
I don't think it is, mate. I think he brings as many players into play all the time. He links the play really well. That's why I think he should be playing for Scotland, because I think that's what we miss sometimes. As you know, it's not just about running about, which is Shea Adams in my opinion. But
didn't he slag off Shea Adams in front of me?
That's me lost this one. That's me lost this one because I've slagged Scotland.
No, look, I'm stepping in anyway. Right, a few trains of thought here, and you've touched on a few of them already. One is that statistically, on paper, Lawrence Shankland is better. Greg, you've just listed off some stats that make him out on paper to be better. A lot of those goals were for Ayr and Dundee United in the Championship, so I don't think just having appearances and goals makes like that important. The point that Darren's just made is the first thing I was going to say when I came back in, which is that then O'Connor was playing as a partnership, a two up front. A lot of Shankland's time he's been the sole striker, the only goal provider for his team. So again, statistics don't come into it. I think if I'm picking a team and looking for someone at their best to play up front, especially alongside John Robertson, you want big man, wee man in a 4-4-2. I would be picking O'Connor. I would. I think Lawrence Shankland now this season, I see a lot of traits that are making him better. He's actually seems to be getting better by tracking back a bit more, by linking the play. I watched that game against Celtic and he was unbelievable. There's no getting away from how good Lawrence Shankland is. But Gary O'Connor, like Darren said, he's gone down to the Premier League, quite right. He had 16 caps for Scotland and 4 goals. Shankland's got 4 and 18, so very similar at a national level. And Shankland is playing in a better Scotland team, you would argue, as well. Yeah, I can see it either way. It's very similar to the Leighton and Gordon debate. I could give it to either of them.
79 goals in his last 4 seasons. And we're only
listen, Tom's he's made his decision, Greg. He's made his decision. It's Gary O'Connor. Thank you.
Right,
and I could argue that Scott Brown and Derek Radlin should be in there as well, by the way, before you get on your high horse. So
we've argued that, though. We've argued that and you lost, so move on.
Well,
right, boys, let's... Come on, let's keep it friendly. So, yeah, I mean, the final starting 11, it does have slightly more Hearts players in it than Hibs. It's 6-5 to Hearts, which ends the sort of agree to disagree segment, which is where this came from. So, for the listeners at home who can't see the graphic, just to recap, we've got Gordon in goals, David Gray at right back, Stephen Presley at centre half alongside Frank Sauze and Takis Fisas left back, Neil McCann, Russell Latipi, John McGinn, and Rudy Scatchell, and up top, John Robertson and Gary O'Connor. What a team that is, by the way. Unbelievable.
That's a great team, to be fair.
He's a team.
No bad. And
proudly as well, we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those 11 are Scottish players as well. So unlike the old firm, if you can make a combined 11 of them, none of them would be Scottish, let's be honest. So well done to Edinburgh for representing and flying the flag. So, and also well done to you, Greg. You've managed to somehow, even though you're angry at me for a few of those calls, you still have come out 6-5 ahead.
No, I think it's difficult. It's difficult. I think what that shows, Tom, and I'm sure Darren felt it when he was doing it, is some of the players that we never mentioned there are incredible. You know, players like Anthony Niemi and guys like Mixu Patalainen. I thought he might have had a shout. Stephen Fletcher. You know, these guys you could easily make a case for in those teams. So, you just wish you had them all at the same time, or you could keep some of these boys at the clubs. You know, when we lost them, but it was a fun thing to do.
Or get slightly better fees when you do eventually sell them. I think that's another key takeaway. There we go. Right, that's everything of yesteryear discussed. We'll have a quick sort of 5-10 minutes just now before we close off to discuss what this is all about. The Edinburgh Derby happening on Saturday the 27th of December, which if you're listening to this will be tomorrow. It's one of the strangest Edinburgh derbies, I think, in many ways, because for a long time, because you've got Hearts at the top of the league trying to win a league title, and Hibs have had a slow start to the season but are still chipping away and are in with a shout of a European spot potentially come the end of the season. They've gone under the radar a wee bit, a few too many draws at the start of the season, but at Easter Road, anything can happen, I suppose. So the first question is, how is this game going to be won and lost? With the form they're currently in, with the players they've got available to them, with the injuries that we've spoken about earlier. Darren, from a Hibs perspective, how is David Greig going to approach this, think?
I think it's a bit of a difficult one. I mean, I think one of the challenges that Greig's had this whole season really has been that kind of starting 11. I think we touched on it at the start of the podcast around, Greig, you spoke about Miguel Chaiwa. We've mentioned earlier on about that centre sort of defensive pairing. He seems to go with he was keeping Hanley at the team. Hanley's come in and O'Hara's come in a wee bit as well, and also Jack Iredale's come in. Jordan Obita's been in, and obviously the Cadden brothers as well. And I think for me, on paper, the Hibs team is arguably one of the best teams we've had in a number of years. The problem that obviously we went on that phenomenal unbeaten run last year, which is great. The squad is there. I think the problem that we've had this season is the inconsistencies. Obviously, Bowie's been kind of hot and cold. Boyle's been a bit hot and cold. Midfield-wise, Joe Newell's come back from injury. Josh Mulligan's been playing midfield. He's also been playing right wing back. So I think for me, it's just having that kind of settled 11, which we've not necessarily had over the course of the season. Clingy's come in. He's sort of blown hot and cold. Obviously, he's been a record signing as well. So a lot of Hibs fans want to see more of him. A lot of Hibs fans want to see more of Chaiwa. Obviously Jordan Smith started the season as number one. We've now got Salinger in as number one. So yeah, the whole season's been a wee bit funny, if I'm honest, from Hibs' point of view. But we've had some phenomenal performances and we've had some absolute dross at the same time. So I think, to answer your question, Tom, in terms of where this game's going to be won and lost, I think defensively, generally Hibs look okay. Okay this season. We've not conceded a lot of goals. We've had a few clean sheets as well. But for me, I think it's going to be the midfield. I think that's where the game's going to be won and lost. Greg's already touched on Cammy Devlin, who's having the best season that I've seen him play for Hearts. Josh Mulligan, I think, needs to be on him. He's the only guy that Hibs have got with that sort of engine that could keep up with Cammy Devlin. And then it's who he plays alongside Mulligan, whether it's going to be Newell or Chaiwa or Levitt potentially. There's a number of players. Jamie McGrath's probably going to play in that sort of 10 behind the front two, possibly Bowie and Boyle, or maybe just Bowie on his own. But yeah, I think for me the midfield's going to be the crucial thing, because unlike a few derbies in general are, they always tend to be won by the odd goal, let's be honest. But I think generally speaking, both Hibs and Hearts have got a pretty decent settled defence. Hearts obviously with Finlay and Halkett and those guys. And then up front, Shankland, Braga, Hibs will probably play with Bowie and Boyle. So I think for me it's a midfield. That's where it's going to be won and lost.
Yeah, like you say, to try and find that settled 11 is important, and you're not going to find that between now and next week, are you? You've still had to chop and change. It's very, very interesting. The first derby of the season was won in the last minute, wasn't it? It wasn't a clear winner from that game. It was another very dull stalemate. I think Hearts did dominate most of it, I think is fair. But if it had ended 0-0, no one would have been too surprised. So going to Easter Road, Hearts have had a couple of wins there in the last 3 or 4 seasons. Greg, thoughts from your perspective? Are you optimistic going into this? You're in the best form. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a derby, Tom. I've done a wee bit of research in preparation for this, and the last time a derby was won by more than one goal was January 2023. So we're coming up for 3 years since it was won by more than the odd goal. There's been, I think, 4 out of the last 9 have been draws. The other 5 have been decided by the odd goal. So I think that would indicate it's going to be more of the same. And I think Hearts are not as strong as we were. We obviously have had a few injuries, but you touched on, they're going for a league. I think a lot of Hearts fans are realistic and, I'm not saying we're going to win the league, but if you want to contend up there and stay up there, then you need to get results in these types of games because, Celtic and Rangers will. So, I'd take the draw now because it's at Easter Road. And I think most folk will say that going into a derby. Just being honest, if that a draw.
That's why so many of them have ended as boring stalemate games. It's clearly seeping in from the fans to the manager, the coaching staff, the players.
And the time of year and stuff as well, like this derby's always touchy. I think it could be a bit of a battle. I agree with Darren. I think midfield's crucial. Devlin needs to keep the head. I would be targeting him if I was Hibs. Mulligan's the right player to do that with. Chai was not available, I don't think, and neither is Rocky or Abita for AFCON. So I think that will have an impact on Hibs. So if I was putting a tenner on, I'd probably put Hearts to win 1-0. But I think a more realistic will be a 0-0 snooze fest. In terms of how I think we should approach the game, or how Hibs should approach the game, maybe is Boyle needs to play. It has to play because Hearts are vulnerable to the long ball, and we're vulnerable to pace. So that's where a lot of our goals have been lost this season. So if if I'm Hibs, I'm saying get the ball in the deep centre midfield and just ping it over the left back or right back's head, whatever side Boyle's on, and let him run. They never seem to do that against Hearts. Every time I watch Hibs and Hearts, I think that is like if they could get Boyle in the game here, we would struggle. But I think he was dropped last week, Darren, and so I'm not sure if that's maybe as a plan to keep him fresh for the derby, but I think he needs to play. I think Bowie's key. Bowie is as hot and cold as you say, but he wins a lot of free kicks, and a set plays could be crucial. I think Hibs are pretty vulnerable at the back. When you look at the league table, I think they've conceded the most out of the top six. I think they've conceded 19 goals this season, and a few of them have been from set pieces. And I think we've scored the most in the league from set pieces. So, I think we need to go for it and be aggressive at the start, but control that discipline as well in the first half. And yeah, if we can put pressure on, win a few corners and stuff, kind of keep them penned in, quieten the crowd down early doors, I think we've got a good chance. But yeah, it's a derby.
Unpredictable is the word, I think, based on what you've both just said. You've kind of said what you'd be putting a tenner on at the bookies, Greg. 1-0. I was going to come to predictions at the end, but
sorry. Yeah.
Is that what no, you're fine. Is that what you're sticking with? Would you say 1-0? Is that what you're thinking it's going to be?
I think 1-0 Hearts. I think we've got the potential to blow teams away and win 3 or 4-0. We've seen it against Dundee relatively recently. But they're a different outfit from Hibs. It's a derby. I expect Hibs to be up for it. So I wouldn't sit here and say we're going to win comfortably. I'd take a 1-0 now. I think that's the most likely result, but it could easily be the other way. So maybe back it both ways.
Just don't back it, I think, is the...
Each.
Even
there we go. So I mean, famous last words for you, Darren. Earlier you said, I think it'll be won by the odd goal. I mean, you didn't want to be sitting here listening to this a week from now, and it's been a record victory. I do agree. I don't think it'll go that way. From a neutral's perspective, I've watched 3 or 4 of the last half dozen Edinburgh derbies, and they're always very, very dull. It almost seems like both teams are too worried about how it looks on the eye and not really too arsed about just getting the win. It's almost like they're trying to impress fans by playing well against their rival instead of just trying to beat them by any means necessary. And like you've said, I think Hibs, one of their best strengths going forward is that pace from Boyle. And you've said, Greg, that they're not exploiting that when they've played Hearts recently. But that's not nice on the eye to just ping long balls and hope that your striker gets in the end of one of them. So that's my point, is I think they're trying to play for to appease fans and make it look nice. Darren, I mean, predictions from you. What are you? I mean, optimistic predictions or realistic? What do you think?
I mean, I think, Boyle had that great one-on-one at Tynecastle, didn't he, when he was, he sort of clipped it over the keeper and it hit the bar. So we do try and exploit that sort of, as you were saying, Greg, on the break, a wee bit of vulnerability on the break. But I think, for me, Optimistic, 2-0 Hibs, standard sort of prediction. Realistic, 2-1 Hibs.
Something else.
No, I honestly, I'm actually, like, this is maybe going to shock a few people, but I don't think the gap between Hibs and Hearts is that big. I honestly don't. I think if you go man for man, I know, Greg, you were saying at the beginning that none of the Hibs players would get in the Hearts 11. But for me, I think there's a lot of the sort of maroon glasses on there about how well Hearts have been playing this season. And I think it only takes a few results to go badly, and if you go on a run, similar to what Aberdeen did, a couple of years back where they won 20 games in a row and then lost the next 15, it's all of a sudden those players that you're saying are absolutely world class are not going to be that. And yeah, you've got a couple of standout players, but I think generally speaking, the Hibs 11 against the Hearts 11 is pretty well matched, in my opinion. And I think if we play the way we can play, which hasn't happened a lot this season, I'll give you that, but if we play the way we can play, I think it'll be a much tighter game than what people think.
I think there's a couple of big differences, Darren, between the two. I think you're right. There's best 11 on the park. It's going to be close, right? It's probably going to be 6-4 if you play it 10 times. But the issue is that it's a season. You're not going to have the best 11 on the park every week, and we've struggled a wee bit recently. But you're talking about being up the top of the league. Well, look at Celtic's injuries. Look at Rangers' injuries. They're still winning games, so you've got to deal with them if you want to be in contention or stay up there. And let's be honest, like, second's a great season for us. But the longer it goes, the more belief starts to seep through the fans. Looking at our run post Hibs, it's good. We've got 4 teams in the bottom 6 after that. I think Hibs runs a wee bit tougher. But you look at the two key differences for me are the manager. I think there's far too many games where Hibs should have won this season and they've ended up drawing or throwing it away kind of towards the end of the game through poor substitutions or lack of substitutions. And I think the other one is depth. So Bowie, I think we've spoke before off camera, Darren, about Lyndon Dykes was a potential target for Hibs, I think, if they'd got into the next stages of Europe. And for me, you could take Bowie off, put Dykes on, and you then really need to change how you play. But Bowie gets the odd yellow card, he runs out of puff sometimes, so he does get subbed often. You're bringing on Cleege, who wants to run in behind, and Bowie and Boyle maybe up there. You kind of have to change how you play. You're losing that focal point, that guy who gets you the free kicks, who gets you up the park, who takes the pressure off in the last 10 minutes. And I think that's where Hibs, when you look at their squad, they've not got as much depth as you would want. I think Hearts have got more options. The drop-off's not as big.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. I think you're right. I think there's definitely a problem with the forward areas for Hibs. I mean, that's not necessarily been the case in the last few years. We've always been good up front, but even, I remember when like last season, even we brought Dwight Gale on and guys like that. These were actually good substitutions that you could make. Dwight Gale obviously scored at Tiny, and I think you're right. There has been a wee bit of a mismatch there this season. Probably less so in the midfield. I think midfield we've been relatively strong, but you're right. I think up front we do miss that. And Dykes would have been a great signing if we had bought him in.
Do you think there's a world where he could play? This is what I would do if I was Grey and I was playing Hearts. I'd play Johan left, Boyle right, and Bowie through the middle, and just try and use the pace and use Bowie as the sort of focal point, get the two running in behind. I don't think Hearts would be able to cope with that unless we drop mega deep. But do you think that's something he's got the balls to do, or not really?
Do you know what? I think, well, you know what Johan's like. He's an enigma of life. Do you know, he's either, the greatest player that we've ever seen, or he's horrendous. And that's a frustration with guys like Johan. But I think you're right, that there's definitely an argument to say, and he kind of done that against Rangers on Monday night, where obviously we played Johan and Bowie up front, and then Boyle was unfortunately ill, so he's been struggling a bit with the kind of cold and flu that's been going about. So it was a bit of a strange lineup, to be fair, at Ibrox, but Hibs never laid a glove on Rangers, which is a challenge, and we were so poor in that game, and that's my concern. I mean, I know, Tom, you're talking about predictions and stuff. To be brutally honest, it depends what Hibs team turns up. If it's a Hibs team that I know can turn up, then we've got a chance of winning. If it's a Hibs team that turned up against Rangers last Monday, then we've got zero chance because we were so poor. 3 games against Rangers this season, 0 goals against an extremely poor Rangers side is not great. So, I think you're right, Greg. There's definitely an argument to say the 2 sort of wide men, and then obviously Bowie in the middle. Get the balls in the box is probably the best way to go. But again, because Gray's got that sort of history of Edinburgh, he knows the derby, he knows what it means to the fans. He's never been that attacking with his lineups. He's never wanted to go for it as much. He's almost wanted to be a wee bit more conservative. So hopefully he'll go for it. Hopefully he will, but, we'll wait and see how the lineup goes.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting from the neutrals' perspective as well. I think I was going to ask in the agree to disagree section about Hearts' start to this season if it's been made to look slightly better than it is due to lack of competition from the old firm, because you've had Celtic who were okay under Rodgers at the start. They were doing all right, but Rangers were shite, and then it's kind of roles reversed since Danny Role's come into Ibrox and Rodgers has left, and or that end period of Rodgers, and now under Nancy Boy. It's, I don't know, you've had Hearts have won 3 games, Hibs have only got 1 point out of their 4 against the old firm, 4 old firm matches this season. If Hearts had lost them, which in another season wouldn't be too unlikely, the gap between those 2 teams isn't that great. We're talking ifs, buts and maybes here, but I don't know, potentially the timing of those fixtures as well has had an impact.
I mean, we got Celtic in Nancy's first game, which I think's great timing. I think if O'Neill had stayed
and then
around,
Rodgers last.
I think if O'Neill had stayed around, potentially we didn't win that game. But what I would say is, 2 things. One, if a team outside the old firm's going to win the league, this is the greatest chance they'll ever have in recent years, and live in memory, really. And what I'd also say, though, is that they've been as bad for all the other teams as well. So, if Rangers and Celtic are that bad, then why is Hibs, Aberdeen, these teams not beating them as well? And why is it not a 4-way or a 5-way title race? So I don't think...
That's a frustration, Greg. Sorry to jump in there, but that's a frustration because, Tom, obviously, United, phenomenal result against Celtic at Tannadice, but from a Hibs perspective, Greg, we've not laid a glove on them. And as you know, we normally actually do all right against Old Firm. I think it's the teams outside that we kind of slip up against, but Easter Road particularly, Rangers and Celtic,
That's where I'm saying the manager makes a difference, Darren, because McInnes is historically brave. Whether he's been at Aberdeen, Kilmarnock or wherever, he'll go to Glasgow and take them on. And Nielsen was frustratingly a shite bag when it came to that. And I think Gray's maybe a bit the same. It's still that turn up and let's not get turned over here. And if we can get away with a 0-0, then great, or even lose by 1. I think there's still that mentality amongst certain managers and certain teams with the old firm when really it shouldn't exist, certainly not this season. Both of them will get stronger. Both of them can go out and spend a fair bit of money in January. But, I mean, Celtic just looks like a basket case. Rangers and Aberdeen are the 2 form teams in the league. So Aberdeen's a concern for Hibs, obviously, where they are. And Rangers are only, I think, 3 points behind Celtic. So I think it's whether they go out and back their managers. Rangers seem a bit more settled with Roll. Obviously, don't know what's going on with Nancy. But Hearts will have already done business. I think we've already got a couple lined up. So Hearts will act early and add to the squad, which I think's the benefit of being quite settled with the manager, with the ownership, etc., the board. I think if Celtic don't get their finger out with the manager and then decide what they're doing with signings until the end of January, could be quite a big gap there between whoever's top. I'm not saying that'll be Hearts, could be Rangers. But the damage could be done. So an interesting few weeks ahead.
Might be egg on our face by the time this gets released mentioning the name Nancy. It could be gone by then. It's a fucking shit show over there, let's be honest. It could be could be long gone. But I'll come to you just in a second, and in one word, get a final score prediction from you both as to what you think is going to happen. We've had a few scores knocked around based on what you do at the bookies or optimistic predictions, but we'll just get in a word, and then when I come back on with Matt and Andrew in a few weeks' time, we can laugh at one or both of you for those shite predictions. But I think we're pretty much wrapped up. It's going to be an interesting week or two of Scottish football. I think just the fixture list across the board. Celtic have got Aberdeen. Like I say, we're recording this on the 19th of December, so by the time you listen to this, some of these games might happen. But United have got Hibs at the weekend up at Tannadice. That's an interesting one for Hibs in their race for trying to break into the top four. Like I say, Celtic have got Aberdeen, and then they've got the Old Firm around about New Year. You've got Hearts versus Rangers at the weekend, and then the Derby on the 27th. There's the way the table looks now compared to sort of what will come mid or early January is going to be, I think, vastly different, and that's when you'll really see who the title race is between, whether it's two teams or three. But either way, it's one of the most exciting seasons in the top flight in Scotland that we've had in a long, long time. Before we close out for this Edinburgh Derby special, Darren, score prediction for Easter Road on the 27th.
2-1 Hibs.
Greg?
Hibs 1, Hearts 5.
Incredible.
I'm not even a jambo, but I'll do it just for the banter.
Terrible.
You deserve that.
That's thank you. But no, I appreciate you having me on, Tom. Thank you very much for your hospitality. It's been great to shed a bit of light on the old Hibs Hearts debacles. All the best.
Pleasure. If the listeners like it, we'll get you back in about 4 months' time when the next derby's happening, and it could be egg on face situation if it's a 5-1 the other way.
Well, if Hibs are in the top 6, we might get another derby.
You love to see it, right? Yeah, thanks both of you for coming on. Much appreciated. Everyone that's listening, thanks also to you for sticking with us for pretty much 2 hours now. It's unbelievable. It's definitely a special when it reaches this length. Give us a like, share, subscribe, all that usual bullshit, and we'll catch you on the flippity flip. So, goodbye.
Thanks, Tom.